So tonight in Albany, it is the East Regional Final of the women's NCAA tournament, and it's perhaps the most anticipated women's college basketball game of all time. It features LSU and Iowa. It's a rematch of last year's national championship game. Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese. Of course, if you remember last year, there was the whole Angel Reese throwing the hand in front of her face and taunting Caitlin Clark, who this year has just become one of the greatest college basketball players of all time, men or women. So the game is tonight. It's in Albany. It's the East Regional Final. A trip to the Final Four is on the line. And all anyone can talk about is what happened in Portland, Oregon yesterday between Texas and NC State, and shame on the NCAA. Listen, the NCAA is a terrible organization. They screw everything up. They push women to the side. Women's sports is second tier no matter what. They violate Title IX all the time. Here's what happened. The 3-point line on one side of the court was much shorter than the 3-point line on the other side of the court. How does this happen? Who knows? Who knows? How does it happen in an NCAA tournament game? And here's the worst part. The worst part is they played 5 games before it was noticed. And if you look at it, I'm going to put it up right here. If you look at it, it's clear as day. This is like a shot from like the upper deck. This is the TV view. It's clear as day that the one is shorter than the other one at the top of the key. The NCAA screwed this up royally. They didn't admit their mistake until halftime of the Texas NC State game. NC State ended up upsetting Texas. Now they are in the Final Four, so the men and women are in the Final Four for NC State. But are you kidding me? This is something that if it happened at a high school game would be egregious. For it to happen in an NCAA tournament game, and they played 5 games on this court with it just like this. Before anyone brought it up, you'd think one of the players was like, "Yeah, this is not the same thing that we were shooting in the first half." Right? And nobody brought it up. And when they brought it up, rather Texas and NC State, what they did is rather than making, because there wasn't enough time for them to redo the lines before the game was supposed to start. And you got it on TV, and there's people there, and there's tickets sold and everything. So what they would have had to done was basically put tape around and make a separate line with tape as the official 3-point line. Texas and NC State, rather than give the NCAA more embarrassment, which they should have done, they should have just said, put the damn tape down. We're going to embarrass the hell out of the NCAA. They ate it, and they said, you know what, we'll just play with it. 5 games have already been played like this at this court, at this building, and they played with it. 2 separate distances for the 3-point line, one on one side, a different distance on the other side. It is just, the NCAA is just a disaster. They are a terrible organization. They shortchange women all the time. And now they got a game that's the most anticipated game. This thing's going to get monster ratings tonight. There are people cannot wait to see this. I can't wait to see it. It's going to be a great game. It's going to be a great basketball game with 2 of the best women in the game. Perhaps one of the best, Caitlin Clark, the best shooter that's ever played the women's game. And this is what the big story is. Now, if you've seen pictures of the locker rooms in the past, they have shown pictures of like the women's locker room compared to the men's locker room, and how it's not even close. Or the weight center. Last year there was, I forget what school it was, but there was a controversy where they showed the weight rooms of one of the women of a certain school and then the weight room of the men of a certain school, and it's disgusting. The difference. Title IX is supposed to be equal amounts of money get spent on each sport. That's the point of Title IX. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it, it's the law of the land. And the NCAA lets the men violate it in all sports at all schools. Caitlin Clark is making more NIL money than most people. If you watch TV, she's in a bunch of commercials, and they can't even get the damn 3-point line the right distance from the net. This is a huge embarrassment, a huge embarrassment. And the fact that they played 5 games, what are these players doing? How did they not go to the coach and be like, Coach, that's not the 3-point line. This is way shorter. Or this is like, well, what are you doing? They didn't come out. The NCAA did not come out and say how far off it was, but you could see that it's off. So a disaster. They have a huge, huge moment for women's college basketball tonight. There's no men's game on. There's no nothing else on. It's a Monday night. It's a trip to the Final Four. It's Caitlin Clark. It's Angel Reese. And they're talking about the 3-point line that they couldn't get right in Oregon. A disaster. And then the other story, because now the Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and the Iowa LSU game is basically pushed to third fiddle. Because you got that disaster with the 3-point line. And then you got the Washington Post who came out with the story on Kim Mulke, the LSU head coach, the former Baylor head coach. Turns out she's just a raging homophobic and a bitch, is basically what the story is. And she knew that it was going to come out like this. And she had said, she's denying I haven't read it. It came out before the game. I was preparing for the game. Listen, she knew what it was going to say because they've been calling her and trying to get quotes from her for 2 years now. She admitted that. The Washington Post called her, I think, 2 weeks ago and said, listen, we're going with this story in a week. This is your last chance. Either you could comment or you could not comment, but we're putting the story out there in a week. Turns out a bunch of her players, her ex-players, have come out and said basically she's a homophobe. Brittany Griner was her ex-player. When she was trapped over there in China, imprisoned for basically a handful of weed at an airport, she was sentenced to like 10 years. Kim Mulke wouldn't even come out and say that she should be released because they had issues in the past because Brittany Griner's gay. And then there's other players who have come out and said that they've been pulled into her office and been said that, oh, you've been seen walking around campus with a woman. That's not a good look. It's not a good look for our program. What? She should be fired immediately. You can't have that. Then LSU is a public state school. Louisiana State University. That is a public state university. And that's who they have as their coach? Because she wins games? I'm rooting hard tonight for Iowa, and I'm rooting hard tonight for Caitlin Clark. And shame on Kim Mulke. And apparently, on top of being a homophobe, she's just a bitch, too. She hasn't spoken to her father in 37 years over God knows what. He's made multiple attempts. Whatever it is, it's not something that's like whatever their rift is. He wants to reconnect. He tries to reconnect. She won't have anything to do with him. She runs her players real hard. She is unrealistic with the expectations. Players will leave there. Players will leave her school, leave her program, and immediately start telling stories about her. Listen, bottom line is a lot of these women basketball players are gay, right? That's not a big deal, but that's just the nature of the thing. It's just the nature of the business. It happens so that many of the women college basketball players are gay. Not a big deal, doesn't matter at all. But for the coach to be pulling them into the office and be like, don't be seen with women around campus. And then she's got a job still at a state university. Come on, LSU. Come on. The winning is not that important. You already showed that you could give two craps about women's basketball because you don't give them the same facilities. You don't give them the same equipment. They don't get the money that they're supposed to get. But yet, you have this coach. And she has her job because she wins. Because these players are from every stop that she's made. Baylor, LSU, all of them. So a disaster on the eve of perhaps the most anticipated and what should be a fantastic women's college basketball game. The NCAA can't even measure out the 3-point line, right? They could care less. They don't even care enough to make sure that the court is marked right. And the coach of one of the teams is a homophobic bitch. Women's college basketball. Enjoy the game tonight, everybody.